So when last we left Cool Blue, the all Intel setup, Intel and Deep Cool setup, there was a couple things I was going to do. I was going to go ahead and change some of the lighting, make sure that all the fans were balanced. I was going to go ahead and run the benchmarks, and just kind of make sure that things got situated, got looking good. There's been a little bit of a change in that. Okay, so part of this was easy enough. I went ahead and I ran benchmarks on everything. I didn't get a chance to do it last time because there was so much of a problem just trying to get the Arc A750 to be recognized. Still had a problem trying to get it to recognize the NVMe that was in there. Did get everything situated, did get a version of Windows on, but ran out of time before I had to put the last video up, so I didn't get benchmarks. So this time we're going to go over a couple of benchmarks, and then a little bit of a fly in the ointment when it comes to turning this into, well, not so much turning it into an all Deep Cool and Intel build, because that's the easy part. But there's a little wrinkle. Well, yeah, we'll touch on that. The first thing I'm going to do, we'll go ahead and go over these benchmarks, because, again, with this Arc A750, there's some issues. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is one of those that perform fairly well, and I could have picked either one of these. I compared the Ryzen 5 5600 and the Intel 11400, compared the two of them with each other, because when we tested the Arc A750 to begin with, we did it on the AMD platform. Now we're going to go ahead and we're benchmarking it on the Intel platform, just a modern, middle of the road type of a CPU that would be pretty typical. It's an i5. So, and we'll kind of go over these. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and you'll see these aren't in any particular order, and I'll tell you why in just a second. It did pretty well. Now, the 5600 took a slight lead in this. It wasn't a very big lead. It was a little bit noticeable at 1080p, but as far as playing the game, you would never be able to tell, especially because this is a single-person kind of adventure-type game. This isn't anything that's a first-person shooter. It's not a competitive shooter or an esports game by any measure. Borderlands 3, again, we got decent frame rates, but nowhere near what the potential of this should be. DX11 is still the problem here, and I knew that. The last time I tested, we found that was a problem, and I was able to go ahead and get numbers by comparable numbers to the other GPUs we tested against, which were the 6600 XT and the 3060, I believe it was. 3060 or 3060 Ti. I'll link that last video. In any case, we found that DX11 really was the holdback here and really was a problem, so we went ahead and tested it in DX12, got much better numbers. This time around, however, yeah, it crashed. It crashed during trying to test DX12, and it would not recover. And as a matter of fact, every time I try to turn the game on now, it just stops. It goes back to it just shuts down. It won't load it at all. So I'm going to have to go back into probably one of the configuration files and see if I can't change that back to DX11 to see if that might not be why it crashed. In any case, it doesn't look like I can test this in DX12. So, shortcoming of this combination, I don't know. We'll find out. There's something else that I will be able to test later as well. We'll see if we can't get around that. But for the time being, I had nothing to test. So DX11 has a big shortcoming. DX12 in this game I couldn't even do anything about. Now, Borderlands 3 has given me some problems before, and if the default now is going to be to DX12, I've got several DX12 titles, so I'm going to have to find me another DX11 title to start testing. Far Cry 6 is a DX12 title, and they both were about pretty comparable. The 5600 does end up on top by just a little bit here. They're almost, within margin of error. There's not much difference in both of these. They both did very, very well, both very playable on that A750, and I wouldn't have a problem either way with it. Forza Horizon 5, again, this one flopped back and forth a little bit. 1440p was a little bit in favor of the Intel, and 1080 was, well, a little bit of both. It kind of went back and forth around. But the Intel sort of gets the win here. The 11400 did work out a little bit better with the A750. So, yeah, well worth it. Not bad at all. Horizon Zero Dawn, this is one of those games that I mentioned it last time. It didn't seem to matter what resolution I was on. Now, first of all, it is being held back, even though it's a DX12 title. It's being held back, and it didn't seem to care whether it was at 1440 or at 1080. The 5600 did do a little bit better on this, but for all intents and purposes, it didn't care what resolution it was on. It almost gave me the same frame rate high in 1440 as it did high in 1080 and medium. And, you know, it just really, and their settings are favor quality, original, and favor performance. So it gave me basically the same readings no matter what resolution. So that in itself, we know there's an issue there. It looks like it's using the right amount of memory. It looks like the percentage of use, especially in the higher resolution or the higher textures, was around 88% sometimes. So you think that it's using most of the resources, but it's just not. It's not at all. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I went ahead and put this back in, even though this is one of the harder ones to test, because it's just so time consuming. It's a good looking game, and it performed pretty well. And if I remember correctly, it performed just a little bit worse than the 6600 XT and the 3060 did. So not bad performance, but the reason why I put this game back in is because I needed more to test. And I will go over that in just a second. Not only the Borderlands 3 problem, but also, normally by now I would have shown you guys charts for World War Z. Well, I knew it wasn't going to work, and sure enough, it had the same problems as the last video, where it was totally limited and I had a lot of artifacting, and it just looked horrible. It was untestable. It was unplayable. And that title, which is normally a Vulkan title, would not let me select Vulkan. It would only let me select DX11, and there's a big problem with DX11. Cyberpunk 2077, we took a look at this, and this is actually comparable to the other GPUs that I tested, but it actually looked pretty well. It looked pretty good. It defaults during the settings to the XESS, and so I let it default to that. Looked very good, tested very well, not a problem at all. Almost the same whether I'm using the Intel platform or the AMD platform. I don't know if I expected any different, but basically 6-core, 12-thread, worked great on both of them, looked good on both of them, and this A750 performed within margin of error, no matter what CPU I was using. Again, we're going to see if that changes with the next part of this video coming up, but for the time being. And then finally, our esports title, CSGO. DX9, they've done some stuff here. I mean, because this is pretty good frame rates. And even though it's not quite as good as the other two GPUs in this price range or this class range, it's still very comparable, still good and still playable. And again, it doesn't matter which GPU I list first or second, because both of these swap back and forth. And in this case, the 11400 did better in 1440. And the 5600 did better in 1080p resolution. So we saw that a couple times on some of these graphs, that it was back and forth a little bit. But really, there doesn't seem to be much of a difference between the two of these as far as the performance with this graphics card goes. So that's a good thing overall to be able to tell, or be able to say. It does still have some issues. It does still have some problems. They're putting out new drivers all the time, which I will give them credit for. Obviously, they're going to be working on their next series of GPUs, Battle Mage and Celestial. So it's good that maybe they will keep refining this. Much in the way AMD has done with their Ryzen processors and some of their graphics cards, there's been drivers that have been updates that are constantly improving the performance of their cards and their chips. So that in itself is promising. But what's going to happen next with this setup? Well, I was going to have this as my Intel setup. I was going to be basically my Intel test bench. And I was going to go ahead and change some of the fans to make sure that as much as possible, like the Intel NVMe drive I was going to put in there. I did get one. And then, of course, change out some of the fans that would all be deep cool fans. They would all be addressable RGB, and, we would just have a nice themed build. The wrinkle is that that's not going to stay that platform anymore. I'm going to take that B560 out of there. Yeah. So we're going with the B760. And not only are we going with the B760, we're going with an i7 12700. So a couple of changes, and I will test this rig with not only the A750. With this setup, I will test not only with the A750, but we'll go ahead and go back and look at least the RTX 3060 or 3060 Ti. We will go ahead and look at the RX 6600 XT from AMD. We'll go back and we'll test and we'll see what kind of difference. I think maybe what I want to do first, the first set of benchmarks will probably be against the 11400. Just to see what kind of raise in performance we have going to the 12700. We should have a fair amount. Not having anything to do with the video card, just having to do with the Intel chips testing each other. And then, of course, we'll have the GPU. So there'll be a couple things to go over, as well as revealing what it actually looks like when I get done with it. So I'm looking forward to it. The i7 doesn't have a cooler that comes with it automatically, so I did order another deep cool cooler that should fit this platform, the 1700, the LGA 1700 socket. I went ahead and ordered another one. Of course, it's a deep cool cooler, and so and it's got an addressable RGB fan, and so we'll mix things around along with that Intel NVMe. Basically, the only thing that's not going to be either Intel or deep cool in the whole case might at this point just be the power supply and the memory, because neither one of them make memory. So, but maybe I'll do something, maybe I'll use some Corsair Vengeance because it's RGB, and we'll give it a little bit of pop. We'll see. So that's going to be the next thing that will come up for that, and hopefully that will come up pretty soon. I am still on the fence whether I'm going to finish doing a review on the ZV-1F camera from Sony. It's basically it's the replacement for the CX405 I have, and records in 1080p 60 frames per second or 4K at 30 frames per second. But when I did the unboxing and all that stuff and kind of mentioned the content, nobody seemed interested. So if you guys are interested in seeing that, go ahead and leave that in the comments and let me know. I'll be glad to do it. I started on it already, but if nobody's going to watch or nobody's interested, or all we want to see is just the PC stuff, then I'm more than happy to do that as well. So I'll let you guys tell me whether I need to do that video or not. In the meantime, I'm going to get back to building this, because now I have to tear that thing down and I have to go ahead and swap it out with the brand new parts. And somewhere in between there, I have to edit this video so I can go ahead and publish it. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm glad I'm off work this week. Vacation, yeah. Anyway, that is all I have this time, folks. Don't forget to visit me on all the socials and all that stuff. There's already a blog about the benchmarks and everything on ThatPaulGuy.tech in the blog section. Some of the trials and tribulations or some of the issues I ran into, I've written about there, so you guys can go ahead and go check that out. Don't forget to visit me on buymeacoffee.com. That's my non-tech blog if you guys just want to know what's going on. And then, yeah, hit the other stuff as well. There's only one thing left to ask you to do. It's the same thing I ask you every time, and I appreciate that you guys give me good feedback about it as well, and that's just be nice to each other. Be kind to each other. Just tell somebody good morning, hold the door open, wave, smile, something. You have no idea, and I say it all the time, but you have no idea what a small gesture, it doesn't cost you any money, might do to change somebody's day. You never know. You could be that thing that, just make somebody's day just a little bit better. So do that for me, okay? Do it for you. Anyway, that is all I have. So until next time, when I get to this, I'll see you later.